Ah, One Piece, a titan of an IP. If you don't know someone that loves One Piece more than almost anything in the world, then you probably just don't realize you know someone who loves One Piece more than almost anything in the world. But let's be honest, if that person's in your life, they've probably told you all about One Piece. People who love this story adore it. And I've tried many times to get into it, some more successful than others. But recently I've seen a lot of discussion talking about the fan letter. And so I wanted to watch it, even with the limited context I had. And I'll tell you what, if you want to sell someone on the passion and love that One Piece fans have, even if they don't know the story, I think the fan letter does an outstanding job. My name is Pei, and today we're talking about One Piece from the outside looking in. So let's start with my history with One Piece. When I was 15, I tried watching it, got 30 episodes in, gave up. And then after college, I remember stumbling upon Grand Line arc synopsis videos. I enjoyed those a lot and then decided to pick up where I left off, which was reading Impel Down. I finished that arc and then continued for a little bit, got tired, gave up. There are so many chapters in One Piece, it is completely overwhelming. My most recent relationship with One Piece was watching the live action, going, holy shit, I love this. Decided I wanted to make a video comparing the first 100 episodes, chapters, and the live action to one another, burned myself out, and then gave up again. I tried One Piece, I tried reading the manga, both of which, by the way, were much better paced, but for me, this story has never stuck, primarily for two reasons. The first is the size of the story. To consume it would take an incredible amount of time that I don't think I want to dedicate to something, primarily because of the second reason, which is the lows in One Piece are so low. Everyone in my life who loves One Piece has levied these exact same criticisms. And while I have had a hard time consuming One Piece, this video's intention is praise, not criticism. And there are obvious ways that the length can benefit viewing experience, but even low lows can enhance big moments. I have a couple friends that talk about the lows in One Piece very fondly, saying that they set up the highs really well. And actually throughout this week, I went back and caught up on all of Grand Line Review's saga synopsises. So from my limited exposure to the story and an outside perspective looking in, there are three things that stand out to me about One Piece that seem to make it special. Its characters, peak moments, and significance. I'll dive into those three in greater detail at the end of the video, but first let's look at the primary focus of this video, the One Piece fan letter. Soft spoiler warning a little bit through the Summit War arc of One Piece. If you haven't watched any of the show, I'm not revealing anything crazy yet, so you can stick through this part. I'll give more spoiler warnings later. Part of what makes One Piece special, just like many other shonen anime, is the grandiose nature of the story. The premise of the fan letter is to look at this grand adventure of the Straw Hat Pirates through the lens of everyday civilians. One Piece is filled with epic superhero-like characters fighting one another in grand battles. And at one point in the story, there's this really big one. That arc is then followed by a really big time skip with each of the Straw Hat crew training on their own to get stronger. The One Piece fan letter follows multiple characters who were heavily influenced by the Straw Hat crew. I think it's an amazing representation of what makes One Piece so special in a completely fresh light, stepping away from the singular perspective of the main characters and showcasing just how big the world is and the impact that they've had on so many different people. Dynamics more often than not have to do with the context surrounding a situation. If you want characters to feel big and strong, sometimes looking from the perspective of an everyday person can do so much. This 20-minute episode does a wonderful job of capturing what I think makes One Piece special, but it's also a standalone and outstanding piece of media, filled with expert writing, execution, personality, and emotion. The fan letter is beautifully animated, which is really nice because One Piece has been airing for over 25 years, releasing weekly at that, so there's no shortage of poor animation in this show. For good reason, by the way, I'm not levying this as a criticism. It's just a byproduct of having a story that's been running for as long as One Piece has. Just like the rest of One Piece, the fan letter is built around a core of fantastic characters. The story has an outstanding ensemble cast, but its primary focus is through the perspective of one young red-headed girl. This young girl, who holds pirates with a general contempt, looks up a lot to Nami. Because in a world where might makes right, Nami is capable of fighting on even ground using her clever intellect. Another is a Marine who's being outpaced by his younger brother, who, despite being dedicated to his job as a Marine fighting pirates, is highly inspired by Luffy and his actions that he had an opportunity to observe. The story is really well executed. Every solution to a problem is set up earlier in the episode, and its tone is just fantastic. When I asked my roommate what his favorite parts of One Piece are, he pointed to a couple things, but one of them was its humor, and the One Piece fan letter is very funny. which is really important because a fundamental part of One Piece is the way they don't hide from serious topics. There's a lot of intense injustice in One Piece's overarching story, and something the fan letter does really, really well that I think is exemplified throughout the rest of the series is treat those serious moments with respect without getting too heavy as a story. There's this one scene in the fan letter where the red-headed protagonist bumps into a Marine, and it's actually really terrifying and overwhelmingly frustrating. He levies his power to belittle her and make her feel so small, all standing behind a serious threat of violence. They treat it with a lot of respect, but they don't linger too much. They have another character immediately show up and offer support and then set up a very funny joke. This duality in tone is part of what makes this episode so interesting. There's another point where we're looking through the perspective of that older brother in the war that he fought 2 years ago. It's a scene built around remarkable animation, sound design, and pacing, taking one of the most iconic moments from the series and looking at it through the eyes of an everyday soldier. Part of what highlighted this piece of media as being so remarkable to me is the way that One Piece fans, people who are loosely familiar with One Piece, and people who have little to no exposure could all enjoy it. I think the target audience was fans. And when I showed both of my roommates who are huge fans of One Piece the fan letter, they thought it was awesome, pointing towards many different components and references that they loved. Based off of my anecdotal experience and the online reception, it sounds like it did its job. But what really shocked me is in the 3 times I've watched the fan letter, I've cried every time because the storytelling is just that good. So now's the time to go watch the fan letter if you haven't, because that's what we're talking about next. Do you know how hard it is to tell a complete standalone story that's satisfying for both audiences that have and don't have context in only 20 minutes? Oh yeah, and it's attached to one of the most beloved stories of all time. It's built from a foundation of outstanding writing. I think if you were to simplify writing into one concept, it would be setup and follow through. And this episode is about a young fan doing everything she can to get her fan letter to Nami. They sneak in very funny humor and terrifying world building. They leave tons of little Easter eggs for fans without veering too far away from the primary story. One of the 3 things I want to talk about today that I think makes One Piece so special is its characters, and the fan letter has outstanding characters. The main redhead is incredibly likable and charming. She's clever and determined, feeling truly inspired by Nami. Her decision to take off her glasses when going on her adventure I think is really funny. I also think it's remarkable in the end when she puts them back on, wearing them from a place of necessity and urgency to make sure that she didn't make a mistake because of her vision, but then that allowing her the opportunity to see Nami from a distance. But all the characters are really likable, even the little kids who interact with the shopkeeper when they console her after she starts crying. Or oh my god, the older Marine brother. His scene where he talks about not liking his younger brother is so good. His individual story alone was enough for me to enjoy watching this. A fantastically serious moment in an otherwise silly show. Which leads to the second part of One Piece that I think is so special that's exemplified in the fan letter. Its peak moments. The entire final sequence actually feels like perfectly placed dominoes falling in line, and they literally do that metaphor with the puzzle pieces as they're being picked and placed. The letter being stolen from her and her stealing it back, giving her plausible deniability when she was inevitably caught. Even something as simple as both in the beginning and end sliding between someone's legs in the exact same way. There are tons of little moments you could argue are Deus Ex Machinas, but each one is set up beforehand. From the soul-stealing devil fruit hitting the older brother and the joke that snuck in afterwards. The bookshop keeper leaving the key in the door when it was set up earlier, the little moment where the kids actually care about her when she's upset, them showing up last minute and helping the protagonist inadvertently, or the Marine captain being distracted by Chopper in the final moments. Even in the beginning of the story, the main character is introduced as evasive when she avoids her mom as she starts her adventure. Her creating a clever solution to a unique problem is so in line with her love of Nami, her goal to be influential in a world that's ruled by might. A story about these characters' influence, which leads to the third point of what I think makes One Piece so special, its significance. Despite its silly, lighthearted nature, it at times explores very serious topics. And while treating those things with respect, it maintains a consistent perspective of optimism. It's a highly emotional story that at times teaches deep, profound understanding of the human condition. Part of the reason the characters are so likable and the peaks hit so hard is because there's substance behind them, inspiring for the audience as much as the characters. I'm not sure One Piece is my thing. I'll definitely give it another shot, probably multiple shots, but I do know it is a thing, one of the most loved things, for very good reason. So cheers to a 20-minute episode that somehow captured all the things I find so fascinating about the grand, fantastic story that is One Piece.